My name is Natalia, and I just turned 32 last month. When I was 16, my father kicked me out onto the street, and I had to start my life completely from scratch. Back then, I never imagined that one day I would open the door and see my father standing there. 15 years of icy silence, and now he was here. But the shock of seeing him wasn't even close to what he said next. He wanted me to give him my apartment. The very apartment I had worked for day and night, that I had built with my own effort. He wanted me to hand it over to my stepsister Marina. The same family that threw me out now wanted to take what I earned without their help or support. Some people say that family has the right to ask for a share if you succeed, even from those who once turned away from you. If you think that's fair, tell me why in the comments. Maybe I'm missing something. But if, like me, you think no one has the right to take what you've honestly earned, hit the like button now. Let's see who agrees. Now, here's what really happened. The morning my father showed up started like any other Sunday. I was enjoying my coffee on my balcony, with panoramic windows overlooking the park. My three-room apartment in an elite complex in western Moscow sits on a quiet street in a neighborhood I once only dreamed of. Wide oak floors, a spacious kitchen with a stone island, and a cozy reading corner with a designer lamp. Every detail I chose with love when I bought it 2 years ago. This apartment represented everything I fought for since that rainy night when I was 16. 15 years of hard, almost obsessive work turned my real estate agency into one of the most respected in its field. I started by putting up flyers and working for almost nothing as a realtor's assistant. Now I lead a team of 8 agents. I specialize in helping young families buy their first homes, and my reputation for honesty and dedication brings most clients to me through word of mouth. Last year, we closed deals worth over 115 million rubles. I was even featured in the local Forbes 30 Under 30. Of course, financial success matters to me. But even more important is the stability I've built. My home is my fortress. Every morning starts with a 5-kilometer run with my dog Cooper, a golden retriever mix I rescued 4 years ago. He was abandoned, just like me once. His loyalty has been a constant comfort during the loneliest nights. My chosen family also played a huge role in my healing. Sveta, my best friend since 7th grade, has been my rock. When everyone else disappeared, her parents took me in and let me finish school. We still have Wednesday dinners together, a tradition that has lasted through boyfriends, her marriage, and the birth of her 2 children, who call me Aunt Natasha. And there's Konstantin Igorevich, my mentor in real estate. He saw potential in me when I was a 19-year-old student with no money, serving him coffee at a cafe. His guidance helped me navigate the harsh business world when I had no other direction. My psychologist also deserves a mention. It took me years of work on myself to heal the trauma of being abandoned and to learn to trust again. The path wasn't easy. In the early years, I had panic attacks, sleepless nights full of self-doubt, and a constant fear that everything I had built could disappear in an instant. Thanks to therapy, I realized that my extreme caution and perfectionism were like armor I had made to protect myself after my father's betrayal. My love life was also complicated. I had a few serious relationships, but I fiercely protected my independence. My last boyfriend never understood why I refused to put his name on any of my property documents, even after 2 years of living together. He called me distrustful. Maybe he was right, but once you've lost everything, you learn to defend what you've rebuilt. The stability of my daily routine gives me solid ground. I've built a good life, brick by brick. So, when the doorbell rang that Sunday morning, I had no idea that the carefully constructed world I'd created was about to be shaken by ghosts from my past. To understand what happened when my father showed up, you need to know where our story began, before the betrayal, before the lies. We were once a happy family. My earliest childhood memories are full of warmth. My mother was a kindergarten teacher, and her laughter could fill a whole room. My father worked as an engineer at a local factory. We lived in a modest 3-room apartment outside Moscow, in a neighborhood with good schools and weekend barbecues with neighbors. My mother turned every holiday into magic. She decorated the house for every season and baked cookies that filled the house with a smell of cinnamon and vanilla. My father was practical. He taught me how to fix a flat bicycle tire when I was 9 and patiently explained how the world worked. They complemented each other perfectly, and I never doubted their love. When I was 10, my mother was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. The next 8 months blurred into a haze. I watched my bright, lively mother fade away before my eyes. She passed away on a Tuesday in April. Her last words to me were, "Find joy, Natasha, even when it feels impossible." After she died, my father and I grieved together. We often sat on the swings in the backyard of the summer house she loved. Sometimes we talked about Mom, sometimes we just sat in silence, united by our shared loss. He didn't remove a single photo of her, and every year on her birthday, we bought her favorite chocolate cake. Sveta, my best friend, became even more important during this time. Her mother often invited me over for dinner, knowing that although my dad tried his best, a girl sometimes needs a mother's presence. Sveta and I would talk late into the night about everything and nothing. Her constant presence kept me from drowning in grief. For almost 2 years, my father and I just tried to adjust to our new life. He awkwardly learned to help me with my hair and did his best to answer questions about growing up, questions I would have usually asked Mom. We were a team, trying to keep our broken family together and honor Mom's memory, finding joy the way she asked us to. When I was 12, my father started going out occasionally in the evenings. He always came back before I went to bed. I understood that he was lonely. Mom had been gone for over 2 years, and although I missed her every day, I wanted my father to be happy. When he finally told me he was seeing a woman named Larissa, I felt cautious optimism. There was hope on his face, and I wanted him to be happy. "She has a daughter about your age," he said one evening over our Sunday pancakes. "Her name is Marina. She's 15, just a year younger than you. Do you think we'll get along?" I asked. "I hope so, sweetie," he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. He promised me that no matter what happened with Larissa, it would always be me and him. I believed that promise completely. After all, we had survived the worst storm of our lives together. Nothing could break the bond between us, or so I thought. I met Larissa for the first time when she came over with a homemade apple pie. She complimented my certificate from a chemistry competition on my bookshelf. She asked about school and seemed genuinely interested in my answers. Her daughter, Marina, hung back, expressionless, studying our family photos. Marina was small, with the same light hair as her mother, and her lips were always slightly pouted. When I tried to show her my room, she followed reluctantly, answering my questions with short, one-word responses. I thought she was just shy, so I kept trying, showing her my book collection and the telescope my dad had given me for my birthday. "My mom says your dad makes a lot of money," she said suddenly, running her finger over my dresser. "Maybe he works a lot," I answered, feeling awkward. "We've moved 3 times since my dad left," she added. "Maybe now we can finally stay in one place?" Looking back, I realized that was my first warning sign, but I was too naive to notice. Their relationship moved quickly. 6 months later, my dad proposed. I found out when they came home one evening. Larissa flashed a gold ring, and they were both glowing with happiness. I pushed down my worry and hugged them, telling myself my dad deserved a second chance at love. They got married in a small ceremony at a local restaurant. During the reception, I overheard Marina telling her cousin, "My mom always gets what she wants." Always. The proud tone in her voice made me shiver. Everything changed after the wedding. Larissa and Marina moved into our apartment, bringing mountains of stuff that somehow pushed out ours. Mom's reading chair was moved to the balcony to make room for Larissa's giant armchair. Family photos were rearranged, and many of Mom's pictures disappeared from shared spaces, left only in my room. Larissa set new rules in the house. Chores were divided, but somehow I always ended up with more responsibility than Marina. When I pointed it out, Larissa smiled tightly and said, "Marina's health is fragile, dear. We have to be understanding." Yet Marina's fragile health never stopped her from going to the pool or spending hours at the mall with friends. My relationship with my dad changed too, at first subtly, then dramatically. Before Larissa, he helped me with homework. Now he was often busy with Marina's latest crisis or Larissa's requests. Our Sunday pancake tradition faded, replaced by trips to restaurants where Larissa could show off her perfect new family. When your father and I think about it, Marina needs more attention right now, Larissa explained when I asked why Dad missed my presentation at the science conference. Divorce had been hard for her. She was still adjusting. You're so independent, Natasha. That's one of the things we love about you, she added. But being independent turned out to be a double-edged sword. Being self-sufficient meant being overlooked. While Dad attended all of Marina's swimming competitions, he showed up less and less for mine. Larissa always smoothed over his absence with explanations that made Marina's needs seem more urgent than mine. Then the small incident started. Money disappearing from my desk drawer, a page torn from a book my mother had given me. My school report mysteriously got damaged the night before it was due. When I brought these things up, Larissa would sigh and say, "Teenagers are always so dramatic. It must be hard for you after all those years of being an only child." Marina's attitude toward me swung between cold indifference and active hostility. In front of Dad, she acted like a sweet sister, offering to watch movies or braid my hair. But as soon as he left the room, she would stop and often make sarcastic remarks. "He feels sorry for you because your mom died," she once said to me when we were alone in the kitchen. "That's the only reason he even pays attention to you." I tried telling Dad about these comments, but he brushed them off as normal sibling bickering. "Give her time, Natasha. This is new for all of us," he said. Gaslighting became more frequent. Things disappeared from my room and then reappeared in my backpack or under the bed, making me seem messy or forgetful. Conversations we'd had were completely denied. "We never said you could go to Sveta's this weekend." "You must have dreamed it," Larissa would insist while Dad looked on confused. Despite the increasingly toxic home environment, I kept my grades up, focusing on school as a way out and a potential ticket to freedom with a scholarship at university. I kept detailed notes about my things and our conversations in a diary I hid under my mattress, trying to hold on to reality when every word of mine was questioned. Sveta remained my lifeline, the only person who saw both sides of our family dynamic. "Your stepmother is a manipulator," she said after spending half a day at our place. "The way she acts when your dad is watching versus when he isn't, it's just crazy." By the time I was 12, home had turned from a safe place into a battlefield where I was constantly on defense. I tiptoed around, trying not to give Larissa or Marina any reason to use anything against me. Dad became a shadow of the person who had once been my closest ally. He was so enchanted with his new wife that he barely noticed what was happening right under his nose. I still loved him desperately and tried to hold on to our connection in the rare moments we were alone. Sometimes I saw glimpses of the old relationship I had with my dad, but they were fleeting, always interrupted by Larissa's needs or Marina's demands. I clung to hope that things would get better, that Dad would finally see through their manipulations. But instead, everything came to a catastrophic point one autumn evening when I came home from extra classes and realized my life was about to explode. The evening started completely normally. I had been at the library with my exam prep group working on a chemistry project. Sveta's mom gave me a ride home around 8:45, and when I entered the apartment, I felt an unusual tension in the air. As soon as I crossed the threshold, I knew something was wrong. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table, his face tense and angry in a way I rarely saw. Larissa stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder in a gesture that seemed both comforting and possessive. Marina stood in the doorway of the living room, arms crossed, her expression shifting between worry and something frighteningly like satisfaction. "Where have you been?" Dad asked sharply. "At the library with my group. I told you this morning, and Sveta's mom just dropped me off," I replied. "We need to talk about what we found in your room," Larissa said, her voice rehearsed. My stomach sank. "You were in my room?"
"Why?"
"Don't change the subject," Dad barked. Larissa started sorting through my laundry. "I noticed your dresser drawer wouldn't close properly. I've never touched your things before. This has always been your job since I moved in." But when I tried to fix it, she paused dramatically. "I found something very troubling." She pulled out a thick stack of money from her pocket and fanned out several 5,000 ruble bills on the table. 50,000 rubles, she said. Later I would learn that's how much had gone missing from my wallet. Do you recognize this? She asked. I shook my head. No, it's not mine, I said. They were hidden under your socks, Larissa insisted. My mind raced. I had never seen this money. I had never taken anything from Larissa or anyone else. I didn't take it, I said firmly. I've been at school all day, then at the library. You could have taken it yesterday or this morning, Larissa shot back. You knew I withdrew money for Marina's trip. You were there when I mentioned it at breakfast. I looked at Dad, hoping he would at least consider that I was telling the truth. Instead, I saw something I had never seen in his eyes before: distrust. We also found this, he said quietly, sliding a small gold bracelet across the table toward me. My breath caught. It was Larissa's bracelet, the one she often complained about losing and then found again. I had seen her wearing it just a few days ago. That's not mine either, I said, my voice shaking with panic. Dad, you know I would never steal. You know me. I thought I did, he replied. Those 4 words hurt deeper than anything else. That's not all, Larissa added. She pulled out a small notebook where she had apparently been documenting missing items over the past few months. Small amounts of money, a pair of earrings, Marina's pocket money, all supposedly found with me. This is crazy, I protested, tears welling up. I was being set up. Then Marina spoke. Her voice had that perfect tone of offended innocence. Why would anyone set you up? You've always been jealous that Mom and I moved in. You always make comments about my things. It wasn't true, but 3 against 1 is never fair. The argument escalated. I kept denying the accusations while Larissa presented more evidence of my supposed thievery. Dad grew angrier, not at the situation, but at me, as if my denials were more insulting than the crime he believed I'd committed. I tried to be patient with you, he said finally. I know it's been hard for you to adjust to the changes in our family, but this is crossing the line. I didn't do it, I repeated, my voice breaking. Dad, please believe me. I would never steal. He shook his head, filled with disappointment. The proof is right here, Natasha. If you can't be honest, how can we trust you under our roof? And then came the ultimatum, spoken by my father while Larissa whispered in his ear. You have 2 choices, he said. You can admit what you did, apologize to Larissa and Marina, return everything you took, and accept being under house arrest for the next 3 months. He hesitated, and I saw a flicker in his eyes, something like doubt, like regret. But whatever it wasn't strong enough. Or you can keep denying everything, and then you'll have to leave this house. The words hung in the air. 16 years old, and my own father was threatening to throw me out because of a lie. You can't be serious, I whispered. I'm absolutely serious, he replied. I won't tolerate a thief in my house, especially someone who refuses to take responsibility. I looked at their faces. Marina could barely hide her smirk. Larissa wore a mask of sorrowful disappointment. And my dad, my protector, my hero, looked like a stranger. Something inside me broke in that moment. If I admitted to a lie, I would lose myself. If I insisted on my innocence, I would lose my home and my father. An impossible choice for a 16-year-old girl. But somehow, the decision was clear. I didn't take anything, I said. My voice suddenly felt calm. And I won't say I did. Dad's jaw tightened. Then you need to pack your things. I stood there, stunned by the finality of that sentence. You're choosing them, not me. You chose dishonesty, he said. You left me no choice. I ran to my room, already violated by their search. My hands shook as I grabbed my school backpack and sports bag. What does a 16-year-old take with her when her life falls apart? I grabbed practical things. Clothes, toiletries, school notebooks. Then the priceless, my mother's photos of happy times, my diary where I documented the last 2 years of gaslighting. As I packed, rain began to fall outside, a perfect backdrop for the collapse of my world. I could hear them talking, The soothing voice of Larissa probably convincing Dad that he was doing the right thing, that I needed a lesson. I called Sveta. My fingers trembled so badly, I could barely press the buttons. Through my tears, I explained what was happening. Her mom answered. Horror was in her voice as she reassured me they were on their way. When I stepped outside with my bags, Dad stood by the door. For a moment, I thought he might change his mind. Instead, he stepped aside. Where will you go? He asked, with a hint of uncertainty. To Sveta's, I replied. Does that bother you? Natasha, he began, but Larissa appeared beside him. You made your choice, she said firmly. Maybe time away from home will help you think about your actions. I looked at my father one last time. Mom would be ashamed of you right now. It was cruel, but in that moment, I believed it with all my heart. I stepped into the rain, hearing the door close firmly behind me. I stood on the street, soaked through. I waited for Sveta's parents to arrive. That night in Sveta's room, I cried until I had no tears left. Her parents assured me I could stay as long as I needed, but we all knew this wasn't temporary. Something fundamental had broken, and there was no way back to how things had been. My father didn't object. He didn't look for me. Instead, he occasionally sent small amounts of money to Sveta's parents, not out of care, but to buy his conscience peace and avoid potential custody issues. I felt quietly discarded, like an unwanted object. And somehow, that hurt even more. The months after leaving home became an accelerated crash course in adult life. Sveta's parents, Uncle Andre and Aunt Margarita, became my lifeline. You can stay with us until school ends, Uncle Andre assured me. Your father, of course, didn't abandon you completely, since he sent some money. But as a human being, he acted terribly. Not once during all that time did he call or visit. Later, I learned from mutual acquaintances that Larissa had convinced him I needed shock therapy and that I would eventually break down and confess. I threw myself into my studies with twice the determination. If education had been important before, now it was my only path to real independence. I got straight A's in school while working 20 hours a week at a local cafe to help contribute to Sveta's family budget and save for my uncertain future. After school in the evenings, I ran around the neighborhood posting flyers for apartment sales, earning barely anything. My hands froze, glue stained my jacket, but every flyer I put up felt like a small step toward my goal. Graduation day was full of mixed feelings. I was proud of my achievements, my high exam scores that earned me a spot at the best economics university in the country with a scholarship. But at the same time, it hurt not to see my father in the crowd. I had sent him an invitation, against the advice of everyone who cared about me. He didn't come and didn't respond at all. Instead, Sveta, her parents, and a few teachers cheered loudly for me when I received my diploma and gold medal. That summer, I rented a tiny room in a shared apartment with a roommate, another first-year student. The apartment was shabby, but it was the first space that truly felt like mine. I worked 2 jobs, saving every penny for textbooks and expenses not covered by my scholarship. At one of these jobs, in a cafe downtown, I met Konstantin Igorevich. He was a regular customer, over 40, with graying hair and kind eyes that noticed things others didn't. You look tired today, he said one morning, when I had stayed up all night writing a paper. Student life, I sighed. It shows, he said, and gave me a tired smile. I nodded. Economics, finance, that was my major. Smart combination. He took his change, then unexpectedly handed me a business card. My real estate agency needs a part-time assistant. Pays better than cafes, and the schedule is more stable. Think about it. That business card changed the course of my life. Working at his agency, I learned not just to answer calls and schedule appointments. Konstantin Igorevich became my mentor, explaining the real estate business from the ground up. I took on the toughest deals, selling rundown apartments, helping clients with bad credit. It was a real survival school. By my 3rd year at university, I was working almost full-time at the agency while keeping up with my studies. I sold my first independent property, a small 1-bedroom apartment, to a young couple not much older than me. The commission was more money than I had ever held in my hands. It was enough to move from the shabby shared apartment to a slightly better one-bedroom on the outskirts. All this time, I kept minimal contact with my father. My rare messages about important life events got short, formal replies. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that Larissa and Marina were still in his life, that Marina had dropped out of college, was working as a sales clerk, and still living with them. I try not to dwell on it, not to compare our paths, but it was hard not to notice the irony. At 23, I made a bold decision. Using my savings and a young family mortgage program, I bought a small one-bedroom apartment in an old building. It needed repairs, with outdated plumbing and worn floors. But the moment I signed the papers, something inside me healed. I had a home again, one no one could take from me. You realize you own property before most of your professors had theirs? Konstantin Igorevich joked as we celebrated with champagne in plastic cups, sitting on the floor of my empty new apartment. I'm just getting started, I replied. And I wasn't joking. The next 7 years blurred together, 18-hour workdays, building my client base, and earning a reputation in the industry. I expanded from residential to commercial real estate, studied market trends obsessively, and reinvested most of my income. When Konstantin Igorevich decided to retire, he offered me the chance to buy his agency. You've been running it for the past 2 years anyway. It should be yours. At 29, I became the owner of my real estate agency. The business thrived under my leadership, growing from 3 agents to 8. But my personal healing lagged behind my professional success. It took me years to work through the betrayal I had suffered and to learn to live again. The fear that everything could disappear stayed with me constantly. My longest relationship ended because I refused to merge finances. I love you, my boyfriend said during our last argument, but you still live as if someone could pull the rug out from under you at any moment. He was right. Buying my current apartment at 30 was another milestone in my healing. This beautiful place in a luxury building wasn't just a sign of financial success. It was a statement that I was putting down roots and creating the stability I had lost. I spent months renovating it, making every detail exactly how I wanted. It was the home I had dreamed of on nights I stayed at Sveda's or in that shabby rented apartment, a tangible proof of how far I had come. Through mutual acquaintances, I occasionally heard about my father and his family. He retired early for health reasons. Marina married young, had 2 children, and was now going through a messy divorce. Larissa was as controlling as ever, now focusing her manipulations on her grandchildren. I tried a few times over the years to reconnect with my father, but it never worked. Eventually, I stopped trying, accepting that the father I loved only existed in my memories. The irony of life was that the daughter he had thrown away built a successful life on her own, while the stepdaughter he chose struggled, even with years of his support. But I felt no joy in Marina's hardships. Life had taught me that holding on to resentment only weighs you down. So when the doorbell rang that Sunday morning, I had no idea that the past I had worked so hard to overcome was about to circle back in the most unexpected way. The bell rang just as I poured my second cup of coffee. I wasn't expecting anyone, though surprise visits on Sunday mornings weren't unusual. When I opened the door, the coffee mug almost slipped from my hands. On my doorstep stood Pavel, my father. 15 years had aged him. His once dark hair was completely gray. His tall frame was slightly hunched, and his face was lined with deep wrinkles around eyes that still held that same blue I saw in the mirror every morning. Next to him stood Marina, not the smirking teenager I remembered, but a woman almost my age. Natasha. His voice was rougher than I remembered. In the way he said my name, I could hear uncertainty. I froze. A tsunami of emotions hit me. Shock, anger, grief, and beneath it all, a flicker of that childhood hope that had never completely died, the hope that he had finally come to apologize and make things right. "What are you doing here?" I managed to ask, standing in the doorway. "Can we come in?" He shifted nervously from foot to foot. My instinct screamed to slam the door, to protect the life I had built from the people who had once destroyed my world. But curiosity won. After 15 years of silence, I wanted to know what had brought them to my doorstep. 10 minutes, I said, stepping back to let them in. They entered, both taking in the oak floors, the stylish furniture, and the clear signs of financial stability. "Nice apartment," my father said awkwardly, standing in my living room like a stranger. Which, in a way, he really was. "Thanks. I worked hard for it." My voice was colder than the morning air outside. "Why are you here?" I asked. Marina spoke first. "You've done well for yourself." The tone behind her words was painfully familiar, envy mixed with resentment. "Some things never change." I repeated my question. "Why are you here?" I stayed standing, not offering them a seat or anything to drink, not playing the host, the right to hospitality they had lost years ago. My father cleared his throat. "We heard about your success, your real estate agency, this apartment." He hesitated, then added, unconvincingly, "And we wanted to reconnect." Marina stepped forward. "I'm getting divorced." That wasn't a surprise. I had heard rumors about her family problems months ago through our one mutual acquaintance. "I'm sorry," I said automatically, more polite than heartfelt. "It's hard," she continued, "especially for the kids. Jaeger is 7, Arya is 5. I nodded, not sure where she was going, but feeling more certain the ending wouldn't be pleasant. "We had to move out of our house," Marina added. "Right now we're living with Dad and Mom, but it's crowded. The kids share one room. It's really just a converted storage space." Dad promised. "We tried to help them get back on their feet. My ex-husband isn't reliable with child support, and I'm trying to go back to school to finish my degree." The pieces were starting to fall into place, but I still couldn't understand why any of this mattered to me. "What does this have to do with me?" I asked directly. They exchanged a glance before my father spoke again. "We know you have a big apartment. You live alone, except for your dog. Marina and the kids need a stable place." I stared at him, expecting a joke that never came. "You're seriously asking me for money?" I finally asked. "Not money," Marina said quickly. "This apartment. We thought maybe you could let us live here, or even transfer it to us. You probably have other property anyway." The audacity of that request left me speechless. 15 years of silence, betrayal, and now they were asking for my home. The home I had worked for tirelessly. "You want me to give you my apartment?" I repeated, sure I'd misheard. At least my father looked slightly ashamed. "Not exactly give it. Maybe you could move somewhere smaller. You don't need all this space alone. Marina has kids, you have to think of them." "Family should help family," Marina added with breathtaking hypocrisy. A short, sharp laugh escaped me. "Family. Us. There's blood," my father said quietly, "despite everything." "Despite everything," I repeated. "Despite the fact that you kicked your 16-year-old daughter out for lying, despite never calling to check if I was safe or had what I needed, despite missing my graduation, every important moment of my adult life." He shifted nervously. His discomfort was obvious. "We all make mistakes." "No," I corrected him. "You made a choice. I was just a child facing the consequences of it." Marina jumped in. "It was so long ago. We need to move on for the kids." Her calculated mention of children I didn't know, her unknown nieces and nephews used as emotional leverage, sparked a slow-burning anger in me. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice deadly calm. "You want me to give up the home I earned with blood and sweat to people who threw me out as a child, based on an appeal to family loyalty you never showed me?" "Well, if you put it that way," my father started, but I cut him off. "How else am I supposed to put it? Enlighten me." Marina's mask of politeness slipped. "You've always been selfish, Natasha. Always thought only of yourself. And I have 2 kids who need stability." "Selfish," I repeated, not believing what I was hearing. "I was left without a home at 16 because of you and your mother. Everything I have now, I built from scratch after you took everything from me." "That's ancient history," she waved it off. "You're fine now. Even better than fine. You could easily afford another place." "That's not the point," I said. "This is my home. Mine. I don't owe you anything." My father tried a different approach. "I know. We parted badly." "Parted badly?" I cut him off. You chose to believe I was a thief without any proof. You chose your new wife over your daughter. You threw me out of your life. I sent money to Sveda's parents. He weakly defended himself. The bare minimum to avoid custody trouble. I corrected him. It wasn't enough to really support me. You never called or came to check on me. An awkward silence fell. I could see them calculating in their heads, looking for a way to get what they wanted. I understand you're still hurt, my father finally said. But don't punish the children for past mistakes. Something inside me snapped at that manipulation. Don't use these kids as pawns. If you cared about their stability, you would have helped Marina build it yourself, not come asking for my apartment. We're not asking, Marina said sharply. We thought you'd want to make up for the way Dad always favored you when we were younger. I laughed. The statement was so detached from reality, it was ridiculous. Are you serious? He chose you and your mother over me. He kicked me out of my home for you. Only after you stole from us, I shouted. And there it was. 15 years later, they were still clinging to lies, still believing I deserved what happened to me. I never stole anything, I said quietly. I think you both know that. Something flickered across Marina's face, but my father looked away, unable to meet my eyes. It doesn't matter now, he muttered. What's done is done. It matters to me, I insisted. It's why we're standing here, talking after 15 years of silence. It's why I had to build my life from scratch while you kept supporting Marina into adulthood. Fine, Marina snapped. Maybe you didn't steal the money. Maybe I moved it. You'll feel better hearing it after all this time. Her careless admission, something I'd known all along, said without remorse or apology, ignited a fire in my chest. It changes everything, I said softly. But not the way you think. I took a deep breath, focusing on the moment. Wait here, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. I walked to my sunlit office with a view of the courtyard garden. In the bottom drawer of my desk was a fireproof box holding my most important documents, my property deed, insurance papers, my mother's belongings, and a sealed envelope I had carried through 6 moves over 15 years. When I returned to the living room, my father and Marina were whispering, falling silent when I appeared. I placed the envelope on the coffee table between us. What's this? My father asked. Proof, I said simply. Proof I had kept for 15 years. Waiting for this moment, though I never truly believed it would come. I pulled 2 documents from the envelope. The first was a yellowed but readable bank statement. This is the statement from your joint account with Larissa, I said to my father. See the withdrawal on October 14th, 50,000 rubles. Exactly the amount I was accused of stealing the next day. My father stared at the paper. Confusion crossed his face. Where did you get this? It got lost among my school papers. I found it the night I packed my things after you kicked me out. Too late to change anything, but I kept it anyway. I placed the second document next to it. It was a transcript of a phone call I had with Marina 3 years after I left. Back then, she blabbed about everything, not knowing I was recording. Marina's face burned red with anger. You recorded me without permission. That's illegal. Honestly, I said, after what you did to me, I don't care much about your idea of right or wrong. My father picked up the transcript, scanning the highlighted lines where Marina bragged about planting money and a bracelet in my room and convincing her mother to help her get rid of her competition. Is this true? He asked Marina. His voice was empty. She lifted her chin defiantly. We were kids. I was jealous. Mom said you always put Natasha first, that we needed to break your attachment to her. The confirmation hung in the air between us. My father sank onto my couch uninvited, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. Larissa knew? He asked in a barely audible voice. Of course she knew, Marina said impatiently. It was her idea. She said, you're too blind when it comes to your precious daughter. I watched my father process this, realizing his wife had manipulated him and that he'd rejected his daughter because of a deliberate lie. Part of me had imagined this moment for years, fantasized about the satisfaction of seeing him face the truth. Reality was more complicated. It was a mix of triumph and fresh grief for all we had lost. All this time, he muttered. All these years. Yes, I said simply. All these years. He looked at me, tears filling his eyes. Natasha, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. The apology I had waited 15 years for sounded surprisingly hollow. Too little, too late. Like a bandage offered for a lost limb. Your sorry won't fix what was broken, I said quietly. Your sorry won't give me back the years I had no father. We can start over, he offered, desperation in his voice. Now that I knew the truth, Marina cut in sharply. That doesn't change our current situation. You can mourn the past all you want, Dad, but we still need a place to live. And Natasha still has that apartment she doesn't need. Her stubborn sense of entitlement, even after being exposed as a liar, was almost impressive in its audacity. I turned back to my father. And you stand here, offering apologies as if words can bridge the gap between us. Where were you when I tried to find a place after school? Where were you when I worked 2 jobs to pay for college? Where were you on every birthday, every new year, every moment I achieved something with no parent to share it with? My father seemed to shrink under the weight of my questions. I thought Larissa convinced you that this was the only way to reach me, that eventually I'd admit what I'd done. But when I didn't, when years passed and I kept insisting I was innocent, did it ever occur to you that maybe your daughter was telling the truth? He had no answer. Marina tried a different approach. Look, what happened was awful. I admit it. We were terrible to you, but my kids aren't to blame. They need a stable home. I made myself stable when I was barely older than them, I replied. I know how tough the job market is, how expensive daycare is. I faced it alone at 16. You're 31, with family support. Handle it. So you won't help at all? My father asked, his voice carrying a hint of the old authority. After everything I did for you, as a child? The audacity of his question left me speechless for a moment. Everything you did? You mean meeting the bare minimum of parental duties until I turned 16, then abandoning me? I was supposed to be grateful for that. I wasn't perfect, he admitted. But I loved you. I still love you. Words I had longed to hear now sounded empty. Love isn't just a feeling, Dad. Love is action. It's being there, believing in your child, supporting them even when it's hard. By every measurable standard, you stopped loving me the night you chose to believe I was a thief. Marina stood sharply. This isn't getting us anywhere. Are you going to help us or not? Not a single inch of this apartment will ever belong to you, I said calmly. Not a corner. Not for a day. Not for an hour. This is my home, and you are not welcome here. You're still selfish, Marina spat. And you're still the arrogant one who never faced the consequences of her actions, I shot back. Some things never change. I turned to my father. I think it's time for both of you to leave. He wavered to his feet, looking lost in the home of the daughter he barely knew. Natasha, please. We can fix this now that I know the truth. The truth was always here, I interrupted. You just didn't want to see it. You kept choosing Larissa and Marina over me, again and again. And now you're here not because you missed me or want to make amends, but because you need something from me. That's not fair, he said weakly. Nothing about this was fair, I agreed. But unlike you, I stopped expecting life to be fair. I built my own fairness, my own safety, my own family of people who are truly here for me. I moved toward the front door, signaling the end of our conversation. Marina bolted out first, muttering about my selfishness. My father lingered, pleading with his eyes. Can I at least have your number? Maybe we could talk again when emotions settle? I weighed the child in me, who still longed for her father, against the woman I had become, who knew how to protect herself. No, I said finally. I tried for years to reach you, to maintain any connection. You ignored every attempt. You can't just barge into my life when it suits you, or when you need something. I made a terrible mistake, he admitted. Yes, you did, I said. And mistakes have consequences. These are yours. He turned at the threshold one last time. I'm really sorry, Natasha. I nodded, acknowledging his words but not accepting them as enough. Goodbye, Dad. I closed the door and leaned against it as the sound of his car starting and driving away drifted through the windows. Cooper nudged my hand, sensing my state. I slid to the floor, burying my face in his soft fur, and 15 years of held-back emotions finally poured out. When my tears dried, I called Sveta. She arrived 20 minutes later with coffee and unwavering support. You okay? She asked after I recounted the entire confrontation. I think I'll be okay, I said honestly. It wasn't the ending I had imagined, but maybe it was the ending I needed. I always thought that seeing justice served would feel better. Justice doesn't heal the original wound, she said. It just proves you weren't crazy. You know what's ironic? I finally said. After all these years wondering if he'd ever admit the truth, it turned out it didn't really matter anymore. I had built my life without him. His opinion stopped being important to my happiness a long time ago. The next week, life went back to its rhythm. My business kept growing. Cooper and I ran in the mornings. I had dinners with Sveta's family and hosted movie nights with friends. Slowly, that fateful meeting with my father and Marina became just another event in my story, important but no longer defining. 3 months later, a postcard arrived in the mail. Inside was a short note from my father with his phone number and an open invitation to call if I ever wanted to talk. I put it in my desk drawer, neither accepting nor rejecting the offer. The choice was mine now, and that changed everything. My home remained my sanctuary. Not a single inch would ever belong to those who betrayed me. But every inch told the story of my resilience, my determination, and, ultimately, my triumph. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who once took you for granted and then expected help from you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is say no to toxic people, even if they're family. Please like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming challenges and share it with someone who might need a reminder of their own strength today. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, you deserve to protect the life you've worked so hard to build.